Hello, everybody. Welcome to this webinar, From Sun to Roof to Grid, Distributed Solar Solutions for Developing Challenges. And I'm Silvia Martinez. I'm lead energy specialist based in Vienna. And I want to welcome you to this interesting webinar. I think to start, we would like to hear from you, to get to know you as audience. So if you could please complete this poll, it would be very, very good. So just check out the options and just indicate what kind of institution you belong to. And while we wait for people to join, I think we will wait a few minutes till getting their answers and summarize it. So while I get to know you, so I think I just wanted to highlight that, I'm the TTL of one of the multi-phase approach for renewables in the region. And this is really an exciting workshop today. I really distributed PV is an important part of our program. And I think I will have opportunity later to explain a bit more about what is the multi-phase approach in program in ECA, the ECARES program, and some of the projects that we have been working on as part of the program and the knowledge exchange network that will be launched within this program. Thank you. So Oscar, I leave it up to you and when you think we have enough answers to continue.
Yes, so here are the results.
Okay. So I see here we have, almost 30% of participants from World Bank, but we have also representatives from the ministries of energy, regulatory agencies, and also research institutions, and from other cooperation multinational development banks. Thank you. So good, this is very good. Thank you very much. So I think that maybe I would like to start by introducing Chandrasekhar Govindarajalu, or the practice manager for ESMAP, the Energy Sector Management Assistance Program. He will be giving us some opening remarks and explain about this exciting work. We will also have we'll have a presentation from the task team that has been working on a lot in a series of reports. We have Alan Lee and Thomas Flochel that will do a presentation. And then we will have a panel with very reputed and distinguished panelists, reputed experts in this area and distributed PV resources, in general also in grid networks and in IT. So we'll have Abhishek Ranjan, partner at Ernst & Young Parthenon in India, Yavuz Sumail, which is the deputy CEO and board member of Solakati in Turkey. And we will have Mfundi Songo, the chairperson, distributed steering committee of technology at ESCOM, and Julieta Geraldez, director of integrated grid planning and electric power engineers. This is a recognized international expert in distributed generation systems. So, and finally, we'll have some closing remarks by Christophe de Gobello, who is the senior specialist and responsible from the Innovative Solar Program at ESMAP. But without further ado, I will pass the floor to Chandra. He will give us some opening remarks to explain about this workshop today, this webinar. Thank you. Over to you, Chandra.
Thank you, Sylvia. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to colleagues joining this ESMAP webinar. Today, we are going to be presenting this series of 3 reports on the topic of from sun to roof to the grid, mainly focused on rooftop, but also other distributed renewable energy. And this has been done, with the idea that we can increase the work in this area, increase the business in the area, increase the interest in distributed renewables. And that is because of a few reasons. As you all know, distributed renewables, has unique opportunities because it is modular in nature. It can be implemented with more ease. It can be financed with the support of local financial institutions as much as possible. And also it is accessible not only to the larger industries, for example, but also the commercial and even households can benefit a lot. So it has got a range of people that can and end users that can be supported and benefit from that. As well, it is providing benefits to the grid at the tail end of the distribution system. So it has got all technical benefits also. So for a number of reasons, the deployment of distributed solar and especially rooftop solar is very attractive for our client countries, the World Bank. And ESMAP is very happy to support them through this work and through our work in mobilizing financing. At the same time, in addition to all these advantages, there are also some challenges in integrating a large amount of small renewables in the system at various points. And there are great challenges. There are still financing challenges. New business models are needed because even with the lower cost, sometimes these systems are out of reach for households, and you need suitable policy interventions and financial incentives that will create the right business models to make this market grow and bring more service providers in the game. So all that is going to be presented and discussed today. And I really look forward to the discussion this morning. Hopefully that will lead to more rapid growth of rooftop solar and distributed technologies. So looking forward to that. And ESMAP is entering a new business plan from this past July. And this is an area where we look forward to supporting in much more depth in the current business plan, which will run from up to FY30, up to 5 years, 6 years, in fact. Thank you. And I'll hand it back to Sylvia.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chandra, for your remarks. And I think now we can go ahead and directly with the presentations of Alan and Thomas. So I think they both have been working very hard in this series of reports since 2019, actually. And this has been a very interesting series. I've been personally following them very closely. And so Alan is a new energy specialist. He's based in Turkey. And he's also a member of the team of the MPA in Icaris, and he has been helping a lot in many important projects in Turkey, an important distributed generation program in Turkey. He has over 19 years of experience in the bank, and he joined the bank in 2013. And he has been working in Turkey, China, Myanmar, and has done important work in ESMAP, also in the analysis of distributed PV. Before joining the bank, he was working with the Australian government. And then we have also Thomas Fleuchel. He's senior energy economist. He's based currently in Senegal. And he has been also working in the bank since 2013. He has led investment and advisory operations across the regions with focus on electricity access, utility reform, and also authored a number of ESMAP reports. He holds a PhD by the University of Edinburgh. So I think at the moment, I will pass the floor to them. They will present a very interesting messages that maybe some of you will be surprised about, and we'll debunk some of the general understanding about distributed PV, and I think it will be very, very interesting for all of you. Thank you. Over to you, Alan and Thomas.
Thanks so much, Sylvia. Can I just check that you can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thanks so much. And you should be able to see a graph from the IEA. Please let me know if you can't see it. I'm going to be controlling the slides as we go. And thank you very much to ESMAP and the big team involved in this work. As Sylvia said, my name is Alan. I'm based in Ankara, and I've been leading this work with Thomas and colleagues. Why is this topic important? Well, according to recent IEA data, distributed PV could actually form 1/3 of all new capacity and renewables that comes online in the next coming years. On this graph, you can see the orange band shows distributed PV compared to the yellow band at the bottom, which is utility scale or large PV. And this makes it the fastest growing local energy technology. Every country needs to be prepared for this rapid growth, which is occurring with and without government support. Just to be clear what we're talking about, because the term can mean different things. Rooftop solar is one way. We're talking about grid connected, but there's actually more than one way to connect to the grid. In our report series, we use a terminology of three types, feeding all, some, or none of the power to the system, to the grid. And so it represents a spectrum, including at that one extreme off-grid systems that may be nearby a grid, or that may be connected to a grid but need to rely on DPV plus storage when the grid is not working. And that's very important in countries that are experiencing increasing outages around the world with climate risks, as well as basic challenges for utilities. And this growth that we're seeing is not just about the PV, although it's what most people think of as a distributed resource. It's accompanied by radical changes that are affecting the power system fundamentally, including digitization, the use of other technologies like batteries, electric vehicle charging, smart homes that provide opportunities for interaction and for coordination across users. And this creates a different role and different set of stakeholders, including for local distribution companies and retailers, as well as for planning purposes. This slide summarizes 3 key messages, which we'll come back to at the end. But as a result of this 5 years of work that has been taking place with ESMAP support, we've noticed that as a new technology, people think of it in different ways and have different understandings, and they also have different interests. This can lead to some misconceptions or myths, which we think are important to correct. The first myth is that DPV can benefit only a lucky few customers who happen to have the space on their roof and the money to afford the capital cost of buying a system. The reality is that DPV can benefit many actors in different ways, which we will see in the later slides. The second myth is that DPV has a limit of a certain percentage that must not be exceeded in order to make it grid friendly, based on safety concerns, technical concerns. However, DPV has been deployed safely and reliably at very high levels, sometimes even exceeding local feeder capacity when done in the right way, and that the measures to do that examples include the way that you use inverters, the size of the inverter ratio for AC to DC, strategic site locations, etc. In today's slides, we won't go into detail on the technical solutions, but I would guide our audience to report 2 of the 3 series, Power Systems and Distributed PV, for a deep dive onto those topics. The third myth, which is perhaps the most dramatic, is that DPV causes a death spiral for electricity utilities. What does that mean? It means that there's a concern that as electricity prices are high, maybe outages become more frequent or are a concern. Customers who can afford will opt for DPV, and they'll actually defect from the grid, which leaves less customers for the utility, less revenue, and requires other customers who remain on the grid to pay more over time, who then have more of an incentive to afford DPV to also defect from the grid. That's what's meant by the death spiral. But what we would like to show and argue in our reports is that, in fact, DPV can be designed to support utility finances and support improved service. And we have a use case called Bootstrap, which Thomas will discuss. Over to you, Thomas.
Thanks, Alan. So as you can see on this slide, the World Bank has over a decade of accumulated experience across the world, ranging from fragile regions like the West Bank and Gaza to small islands like Haiti and the Maldives, all the way to more advanced markets like China and India. Next slide. And based on these experiences, Alan and I and a large team of experts that are acknowledged in each report prepared this series of reports called From Sun to Roof to Grid. So the reports provide guidance on cases where distributed PV can provide a full or partial solution to technical and economic challenges. They go into planning aspects, the economics and impacts of DPV's use on utilities, and also look at possible business models and their implications. So the first report, report 1, is really destined for decision makers and non-experts. It provides an overview of 9 examples of potential DPV applications or use cases, which Alan will go through next. The next 2 reports are destined, are more addressed at experts, planners, regulators, policymakers. The second report focuses on technical aspects of DPV integration within existing grid power systems. And the third one presents a new paradigm for DPV policy and economics, taking the reader through a step-by-step framework for developing a comprehensive policy package for DPV. So back to you, Alan, for the use cases.
Thanks, Thomas. This slide shows an infographic, which I'll go through step by step. But the headline from this is that there are at least 9 different ways that DPV can help to solve specific problems in low and middle income countries. Chandra mentioned the ESMAP new business plan has 3 big pillars. Energy transition, meaning lower emissions while meeting energy needs. Energy access, improving connections for people who have no connection to modern electricity or need to improve it, as well as foundations for the health of the energy sector. DPV can contribute to all 3 pillars in different ways, as these use cases can show. We will do a poll for the audience straight after the next few slides. So in a way, you can consider this a bit of a test to see if these use cases can make sense to you in your country contexts and which ones you think might be most relevant to explore. This first part of the infographic shows that firstly, countries who are trying to meet growing energy demand need to find least cost combinations of technologies for that electricity generation. DPV can be part of that, especially in countries with land constraints like islands, as well as those with very large population densities that may have less free land, but more resources in terms of rooftops. This also has the benefit of avoiding transmission losses, which can add to its economic benefits. Secondly, in congested areas, DPV, when used with demand response or storage, can actually avoid the need for costly upgrades to the grid, to substations and transformers to bring in power from outside, from traditional utility scale power plants that are located far away from the load base. So these 2 are examples of emerging use cases: least cost generation in transmission and distribution, or T&D alternative. The next set here shows for those countries that face outages with their grids and blackouts, often rely on polluting diesel backup generators, and DPV can help to avoid that pollution as a form of least cost backup. The customers that in many countries pay bills that are below the cost of service, such as low-income households who are on a lifeline tariff, or for customers who are chronically in arrears, they do not pay their bills because they don't have the budget, such as certain government departments in countries where the funding is uncertain. Then DPV, to help reduce the grid electricity purchased by those customers, can actually help the utility by not continuing financial losses from serving those customers. So that's the financial loss reduction example. And then on the right-hand side, the box solution in emergencies or crisis situations, containerized solutions that contain batteries and PV can be deployed very quickly at a relatively high cost, but to provide power when it's urgently needed. And then the final third of this infographic shows on the left-hand side what we might consider the most common use, which is to reduce the bills for the consumers themselves. So that's what's been a key driver of DPV growth globally, along with policies that support it, as well as increasing electricity costs. That will continue to remain the case, the question is how to balance bill reduction with some of these other more strategic systemic benefits. For those consumers who don't have their own rooftop or the money to buy it, to buy a system, community social support is an emerging use case that we'll hear from Abhishek from India as an example of this in Delhi, where households are able to subscribe to a system that's located nearby or maybe at quite a distance, but that is accounted to them to help offset their own electricity costs. This concept could actually be scaled up strategically at a city level with great potential for sharing the benefits widely. And then finally on the right, one of the most underrated parts of a DP system is the inverter. That is a form of electronics that converts the direct current from the PV to alternating current for the grid. That seemingly simple technology as a kind of electronics can be used for a range of functions to help support grid services like voltage stability, frequency stability. And this is already also being explored through grid codes that specify certain functions for inverters to be built in automatically to respond to changing situations. Over to you, Thomas.
Thanks, Alan. So next slide. The last use case, which we've called utility bootstrap, refers to the deployment by an ailing utility of distributed PV with batteries or backup generators to improve service for a targeted set of consumers as part of a strategy to build trust and increase bill collection. So for example, in this photo, you're looking at a grid-connected microgrid in Nigeria, which serves a busy market in Abuja. The utility partnered here with a solar developer to provide reliable power to these customers and thereby improve the quality of their service and their revenues. It's a very interesting case where the private developer, the utility, and customers all stand to gain. And we have a box about this in report 3, which, as you can see in the graph on the left, shows a little bit more details about the business model. So that concludes our overview of the use cases. Now that we've introduced you to these 9 use cases, we'd like to hear your perspective and hear. Or rather, we will run a poll now. So here you go. It is up on the screen. So if you can select which among the following 9 use cases seem to be most promising in the developing countries that you are familiar with. And Oscar will leave this up for maybe a minute to give everyone the time to answer.
As you're answering this poll, keep in mind that you can select more than one answer, and that actually reflects the way that use cases can be combined. So with clever pricing and with clever siting of and design of systems, as well as ensuring that grid codes you harness the opportunities, you can potentially meet multiple of these use cases through one program. I feel like this is a horse race because they're all moving.
Okay, I think we can maybe close the poll, show the results now. That's interesting. I mean, I think what is coming out as Alan mentioned, several of these use cases can be applicable in different contexts. Some of these are rather common use cases that we can see already deployed in many countries. Others are emerging, others still like the ancillary services one, for example, which is reflected in the results of the poll, are more opportunities to explore, which only have some application nowadays in a few advanced markets. So if we can pull up the presentation again. And move on to the next slide. So the most widespread use of rooftop PV, and often the first to emerge in a country, is its installation by consumers who want to reduce their bills or have a backup in case of grid failure. But as we've seen, there are a lot of more potential benefits for consumers and for the power system as a whole from other use cases. These are very context dependent, and they often require some change in policies and regulations to enable them. So the first step in the policy making process is really to perform a good diagnostic to identify all the use cases that are relevant given the national and local context. At this early stage, it's also important for policymakers to engage with existing players that are already in the market, partly because they're the ones who know the challenges. And we'll hear a bit more about this from one of our speakers later in the panel. Only once you've taken that step back and also engaged with these existing stakeholders, then the next step is for economists and engineers to work together to integrate distributed PV into their planning models, analyze the economics and technical implications at a project and system level, and design distributed PV deployment scenarios that are optimized for the power system. What will emerge from that work is also a set of regulatory reforms, tariffs changes, grid code updates, etc., that are required to ensure that distributed PV can be deployed optimally and that costs are distributed fairly. And finally, when it's time to implement this policy package, in this implementation phase, it's important to keep consulting with stakeholders and monitoring the emerging business models, adjusting regulations accordingly. And as countries set up the policy and regulatory framework, training programs can also be deployed to ensure that the right skills are available both for the market and within the utility. So this illustration really tries to translate this policy process. And it's also how we've structured report 3 to really guide the reader through a step-by-step framework for designing and implementing DPV policy packages. So for the final slide, and to conclude our presentation, we want you to go away with these 3 key messages. Firstly, DPV can benefit utilities and all kinds of consumers, including those that don't have suitable building or financing, as long as the right program design is in place. Secondly, there is no universal limit to hosting capacity, and low-cost solutions to integrate distributed PV exist. And finally, utilities revenues can be sheltered from the reduction in demand through tariff and regulatory adjustments, and DPV deployment can actually contribute to reduce system costs with the right incentives. That concludes the presentation of the report. There's a lot of material in the reports. We encourage you to log in and download them. And I'll now hand back to Sylvia, who will be moderating our panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan and Thomas, for this interesting presentation. I think it was actually quite, I learned a few things, and that's very good. I think now we have the panel composed by our experts. I mean, I have to briefly introduce them before, but here you will see more details about their bios. We have Julieta Giraldez. She's the Director of Integrated Grid Planning, Electric Power Engineers in USA. We have Yavuz Unal, Deputy CEO of Salarkati, sorry if I don't pronounce well, in Turkey. And Abhishek Ranjan, partner at Ernst & Young, Parthenon, India. And Fundi Songo, Senior Manager and Chair of Distribution Steering Committee of Technology in ESCOM, South Africa. So I think all of you are connected. I think there has been some technical issues. Hope Abhishek can hear us now. But I think we can start with some brief round of questions now for our panelists. I think, and the first question will go to Mr. Mufundi Songo, the Senior Manager and Chair of at ESCOM, South Africa. So I think this question is about, we know about the progression in your experience in South Africa, right? We have seen that South Africa has experienced a rapid growth in PV. Over 22 gigawatts have been installed, with more than 4 years, which is really remarkable. And 5 gigawatts of those are distributed solar PV. So I think in this context is very common I mean, I guess you get a lot of questions about how safe and how scalable is distributed solar, and also what is, I mean, if this is really useful for consumers, and if there is any problem when you have also in parallel some power outages affecting the grid. So I think we would like to hear what is your advice for addressing these questions and ensuring that distributed PV solar is grid friendly, particularly when you are facing some power sector crisis. And also, I mean, there are some, I mean, as we have seen in the presentation, there are some solutions that can really be low cost and can help to really address these issues, but are technically complex and not familiar. No? So how do you, like, for example, inverter programming? So how do you communicate about these technologies? How do you build consensus about the usefulness of these technologies? Over to you, Juan. Oh, I cannot hear you at least. I think we have some technical problems. I don't think we can hear you, unfortunately. Maybe we can start with maybe.
Sorry, Sylvia, unless it's working.
Yes, I think Julieta's working, or Julieta,
Yeah,
can you?
maybe let's move
Okay, let's go to
Yavuz,
Yavuz.
Silvia. Yeah,
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. So yes, let's go to Yavuz Unal, Deputy CEO of Solar Qatar in Turkey. So Yavuz, you have led the first rooftop solar installation company in Turkey, no? and you have been working on developing projects, and government policy and regulations have evolved since then. So what do you see as the key elements of government programs to support distributed solar, and whether that be for business households, and what opportunities you would like to see develop for first scale up in Turkey and other countries such as Europe and Central Asia? Can you maybe be brief? I mean, you have like 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sylvia. It's Solar Çatı.
Solar Çatı. Thank you. And I think you have a slide, right?
Yeah, it's solar rooftop in English meaning. I will answer you in 5 minutes. Okay, thank you again for the question. I would like to start with my company. Solar Çatı is an EPC company for solar and wind energy. In addition to this, we have a charge operator license from the regulator and for EV cars in Turkey. We are about to expanding our business to some European countries soon, and I will share our opinions about how comprehensive government program be like from our experiences with you. And I have a one pager, maybe you can share with all of the people. In addressing key elements of comprehensive government program to support distributed solar energy across sectors, there are several priorities to consider. First one is regulatory streamlining and national grid code. The current permitting process in Turkey is overly complex and time-consuming, especially for small-scale residential solar installations. To accelerate adoption, the government needs to streamline the approval process, potentially by implementing a digital single-step system like in Germany. It's also crucial to develop a national grid code. Right now, there is inconsistency in how different distribution companies handle solar connections. A standardized national grid code would create clear, unified rules across the country, speeding up grid connections and reducing investor uncertainty. The second one is grid hosting capacity and modernization. The existing grid infrastructure, especially in rural or high penetration areas, is often not equipped to handle large amounts of distributed energy. The system for grid hosting capacity needs to be re-evaluated and modernized. The government should invest in small grid technologies to better manage distributed solar energy. In this case, the battery storage integration is very critical here. I see this is an excellent opportunity for Turkey, particularly as the regulator is now working on aggregation rules. This combining solar with batteries allows more efficient energy use and greater grid stability. Aggregating small solar and storage systems into virtual power plants can help balance supply and demand, enhancing grid flexibility. The third one is financial mechanisms and incentives. To encourage adoption, governments should provide financial incentives such as tax credits and low interest loans for both solar panels and storage solutions. For the commercial and industrial sectors, solar plus storage can lead to significant savings, especially during peak electricity periods, making it a more attractive investment. The fourth one is IPP and unlicensed generation. While Turkey's unlicensed generation regulation supports smaller solar installations, it doesn't fully accommodate independent power producers as IPPs models. Reforms should allow for aggregation of small-scale solar projects under a single entity, streamlining access to the grid for IPPs. Clearer regulations and long-term PPAs for IPPs could drive further investments in distributed solar, opening door for larger and decentralized solar energy production. The fifth and the last one is education and public awareness. Public education is the key for this subject. Many households and businesses remain unaware of benefits of solar energy. Awareness campaigns and demo projects could showcase the cost savings and environmental benefits, helping to drive broader adoption. For your second half of your question, my answer is opportunities for scale-up. In Turkey, Europe, and Central Asia, there are several opportunities to scale up distributed solar. One of them is rooftop leasing models. Third-party financing models like rooftop leasing can make solar more accessible by reducing upfront costs. The second is regional cooperation. Cross-border renewable energy projects could harmonize regulations and strengthen solar adoption. The last one for me is public-private partnerships. Collaboration between the private sector and government can drive innovation and accelerate the deployment of solar technologies. In conclusion, simplifying regulations, modernizing the grid, incentivizing solar plus storage systems, and reforming unlicensed generation rules to support IPP models are key steps for scaling distributed solar energy. These reforms wouldn't only benefit Turkey, but also hold potential for Europe and Central Asia. By addressing these challenges, governments can unlock the full potential of distributed solar and drive a sustainable energy future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yavuz. Very interesting. I think we will have the questions at the end for all the speakers, just for those that want to have pose any questions, just wait till the end, just in the interest of time to ensure that everybody gets to speak. I think that the next question will go to Julieta Giraldez. As I said, she's Director of Integrated Grid Planning, Electric Power Engineers in USA. So, Julieta, you have a great experience in power sector planning and integrating renewables in the grid, and also consumer programs, technology, and energy policy. Your focus is mostly US, but also other countries. And the report that Thomas and Alan have presented highlights several ways in which distributed solar can help also to support grid and improve the grid performance and add value beyond the reduction of the bills, right? So, however, we know that this is not simple, no? And it requires a special care. I mean, high capacity to plan properly, and also some programs to regulate pricing, no? So in your experience, I mean, how can power sector actors in low and middle income countries can benefit from this full potential of distributed PV?
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
So, yes, I would like to talk about how important it is to proactively plan and the benefits that can provide with distributed solar versus sort of reacting to it. So we have heard about, on top of the benefits to the customer, there are some benefits from the utility perspective. So multiple values. I think the colleagues from the World Bank mentioned the use cases. And in the US, and this is applicable to other areas, we are looking at planning for the full value stack of distributed solar. So there are regions, for example, that are a resource constraint, so generation constraint, and there's not enough capacity to, provide generation to a local load pocket, or transmission constraints. We're seeing quite a bit across the world. And distributed solar can be a way of interconnecting generation faster and alleviating the constraints instead of or while you build long-time lead solutions. So, for example, a transmission line can now take 10 years or more to be built. And then another important case on top of those is, on top of helping with generation and transmission, is the local value to the distribution grid, which that does require proactive planning. And distributed solar, it has been mentioned, it can reduce losses, it can support local voltage. But one of the most important use cases that we're working with across the world is that it can also reduce peak load locally. And so this peak load reduction is, I think, one of the most important locational values that we're looking at. So if you incorporate distributed solar in your planning exercise, you can get a sense of maybe what the market adoption, sort of the natural market adoption of solar is going to look like. And you can overlay that over the grid plans and grid needs. And you can also do that proactively and also identify areas, sort of target areas where distributed solar might have more value than others, and even overlay that with socioeconomics, and then create programs that can benefit both the society and the grid as you plan it. So, but one important component to understanding that value and the value stack, especially to the distribution capacity value that I mentioned, is that it is dependent on what's happened locally. So the local time of the peak load, is it coinciding with solar production hours? But also it depends on how much solar is already there in a given substation or a given circuit, because you can reach a saturation value. So, for example, if your local substation or your circuit might peak in the late afternoon when there's still solar, and you start adding solar, you might add enough that then the peak load changes from 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. to the nighttime, 8 or 9. And so at that point, you can keep adding solar, but it's not going to contribute anymore to reducing that peak load. And so there's not an extra value, it reaches a saturation level where the extra kilowatt of solar is not being necessarily going to contribute to that value that you were planning for. So I think that proactive planning helps you understand where and when over time it might be more valuable to incentivize in one area or the other. And this is ultimately to sort of optimize all of the use cases that Alan and our colleagues mentioned, the full value stack of distributed solar. So I'll just close by saying that then from a regulatory perspective, for example, net energy metering and other policies are simple incentives to incentivize customer adoption. I think they have served really well to get solar markets started in a lot of regions. But you can also start designing incentives or programs with that value stack in mind, so that they also contribute to the grid. They can reduce the generation, the transmission, the local distribution requirements. But for that to be able, it's very critical to be able to look ahead. So you need to try to plan and develop sort of proactive processes to include that distributed solar in the planning process. So I will end there, and I would be happy to answer any questions at the end.
Thank you, Julieta.
Thank you all.
Really fascinating. I'm really particularly interested in this topic myself, so I would like to chat with you about it. So now I think Mufundi still have some issues, but so I think we will go first with Abhishek Ranjan, partner at Ernst & Young, India. And I think we have a question for him because he has been helping. I mean, he helped lead a utility in Delhi implementing India's first home rooftop solar program. And he has extensive experience integrating distributed PV in several types of businesses, in communities, and in government programs. And in the report from Alan and Thomas, there is one very interesting case study on the innovative use case. It is called community social support. We think this program it's very promising, and it can be replicable and in other countries, in developing countries, and it's very interesting that if we could scale it up. No, so maybe Abhishek, can you provide us a bit more information about the program and the innovative aspects of this program, and also in general your experience. I mean, any lessons learned from that program. Thank you.
Sure. Good morning and good evening. Am I audible clearly?
I cannot hear you very well. I don't know if it's only me.
Am I audible? Hello?
Maybe can you speak up a bit?
Am I audible
closer to
clearly?
the mic?
Hello?
I can hear you, but a bit low, a bit weak.
Okay. Am I clearly audible now? Hello?
Yeah, now it's fine.
No,
Thank you.
okay. This way. Am I audible right now?
Yes.
Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Just if you can keep close to the mic.
So,
yeah.
Yes, sir. So good afternoon and good evening and good morning, everyone, depending upon the geography you're in. And sorry for this poor audio connection because of some of the problems here. Yeah, so you talked about the community solar, which we also known as virtual net metering in India. And we introduced, when I was in a utility in Delhi, as you rightly said, in 2019, the guidelines were introduced in India, in Delhi, basically, virtual net metering, which is a community solar. Along with that, there was something called group net metering. And under the same, the participating consumers, those who didn't have a roof, and the one who had a roof, they have to sign an agreement, depending upon like what is the share percentage of each of the participating non-roof consumer stake in that particular solar, community solar, that is going to be established on the roof of a particular one customer. So in this scenario, what happens is the entire solar is taken as a gross metered thing by the utility, the DISCOM in this case. And that is being offset in the utility bills of the individual participating customer in volumetrically, that is only the energy portion. And that is on the basis of the ratio-effective investment. The commercial settlement here is being agreed upon by the participating people amongst themselves. Utility has no role to play. Utility only facilitates the overall volumetric transactions. And at the end of the year, if the entire rooftop solar is net exporter to the grid, at the rate of average power purchase cost, the utility, what it does, it transfers the amount proportionately in each of the participating consumer accounts. Otherwise, during the year, it is all volumetric. So this was implemented successfully across many participating high-rises societies where the roof was common and individual societies members were having individual meters, utility meters. That is one. Second, in low-rise gated communities as well, they participated, saying that, okay, their community centers had enough roof to install rooftop solar. And that was as a community solar or a virtual net metering concept, where the individuals having no roof or appropriate roof available for the solar, they got benefits of the solar generation, which was hosted on the community center or common area club area roof. So both these cases have been successfully demonstrated since 2019, and now the regulatory commission in Delhi, they have given that up to say 75 megawatt of such kind of connections can be allowed under net metering, both group and virtual community solar. So this is becoming a boon in solarizing the customers who don't have a roof. And in the latest Delhi Solar Policy 2023 notified in March this year, it is one of the business models which has been captured to solarize and enable just transition for even the marginalized rooftops. The energy consumer who are very low in consumption, say maybe up to say 100 units or 200 units per month. Okay, so that is already there and being facilitated. So regulatory mechanism is in place. The consumers are getting benefit of the solar in terms of volumetric credit in their energy bills, and therefore they are getting enabled and benefited of the zero bill in fact. So in Delhi, there is a concept where if you draw less than 200 units from the grid or the DISCOM, your bill becomes zero, the government pays for it. So when they take this benefit of community solar, they are able to reduce their consumption from the grid below the threshold of 200 units per month. So that way they are also able to reduce. So that is another benefit from the community solar, which has been given to the bottom of the pyramid, who are low consumption and low economic income group as well. LCLI, we say, low consumption, low income group. So over to you on this regard. Any questions? I'll happy to answer.
Thank you, Abhishek. And if you can stay, I'm sure there will be questions. This is a very interesting program. I think, and then I think I have a question for the last panelist. I don't know, Mufundi, can you hear us? Can you try to the mic now? Hello?
Can you see me?
Yes, we can. Okay. So maybe
okay, thank you very much.
Just to remind the question was maybe about how do you ensure that the distributed PV is grid friendly, particularly for countries where there are grid issues and grid crises. How do you manage to ensure that? And also, what is how do you communicate about solutions that are a bit complicated to explain to the general public, like inverter programming, and how do you ensure that they understand how it works to deploy them, right? Over to you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, colleagues, and good day, wherever you are. I hope you can hear me. Thank you. I'm based in South Africa. My name is Mfundi Songo. I'm in ESCOM. In terms of the current challenges that we face is that because it's upstream, the solar PV cause overload. So in order to ensure that the overloading that comes as a result of the localized generation, we are installing a number of things. The first one is to ensure that the circuit breakers are upgraded to carry a higher power. And then the second aspect is to ensure that we have an inter-trip switch, which is very cheap because we're installing in most households, if you're doing it for everyone else, which will ensure that it's a grid following inverter. Once it picks up the current, it switches off. The inverter switches off in case it's overloads. Then the second aspect is to ensure that the wiring at the back, once you have upgraded the circuit breakers to the higher levels, you've got it is properly done, and you also have bidirectional relays and protection to ensure that as you move upstream, the bidirectional flows actually don't cause overflow on the lines. Now, these messages are spread through having forums where you have the local people within the places where we work at, talking to the local people in their common language which is usually a big challenge. The second aspect, while doing so, is to ensure that we do what we call social engineering, make people understand the value of solar PV, not as to view it as an inferior sort of power. And the other aspect is the fact that before everything else is installed in the network, a detailed power system analysis is done, not only with the existing solar PVs, but with more solar PVs at the end state, projecting that it will be a bigger network, it will be a lot of solar panels that will be installed, which will fit into the network. And in so doing, we have a budget for what we call refurbishment and strengthening of networks, which are part of the just energy transition technologies that we're introducing into the network. And with that, we are ensuring that most of the solar PVs, because they come with batteries and inverters, we also educate the people on where they can locate the batteries, just in case there are fires, or just in case some things explode or there are accidents. Then the last but not least is that all installations come with the certificate of compliance by qualified people who are electricians and so forth, so that in the event that anything else happens, someone is accountable. It is known that it was done by a professional. It's not just done by anyone plug and play. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And indeed, the social aspects and the communication aspects are very important and often neglected in many countries. So this is very, very interesting to hear from you. So I think now we could maybe run a third poll before going ahead with and taking some other questions from the audience. I think, Alan, I don't know if you can. Yes. So as you can see here, this is about main challenges. No, we would like to know what you have learned, and in your view, what are the main challenges for distributed PV scaling up in developing countries? Please mark what your choice. It is lack of comprehensive government programs, lack of awareness, uneven quality, lack of standards, cost is still too high, lack of subsidies, or if the grid cannot cope with the PV. There is lack of clear business models, inadequate regulatory frameworks, restrictions to sell or pool the electricity surplus generated by the distributed PV. Countries resist to the growth of the distributed PV because they are perceived as a threat to utilities. And finally, if you think that is mostly due to limited access to finance and lack of the risking instruments. It would be good to know, because I mean we have a lot of experts among our audience.
Also, you can choose multiple answers for it.
Yes, of course. Mm-hmm.
So I think we will move to the results.
Yes, please. Okay, it seems like there is quite a division. I mean, there are many answers with similar results. I think it's a mix of everything, right? But it looks like the lack of comprehensive government programs is perceived as one of the most important issues, what leads to the need that really this technology still needs support, right, from the government to really scale up. Yeah, I see also the inadequate regulatory frameworks. This is also very important. But it seems that the threat to utilities is something that is still an issue. Despite, of course, in many places it can be a support to the grid, but then in some places the utilities still see this as a problem to solve. Okay, I think it was good. I think we have very limited time right now. I mean, but maybe we can get some of the questions in the Q&A. I think I see Alan has been very diligently, and Alan and Barbara and Thomas have been answering most of the questions. I think there are some. There's still some question before about the feeder capacity to integrate distributed PV versus the capacity of the DPV. I don't know if You want to take that question?
Yeah, I think so. Just so we're on time, we have still
Yeah.
20 minutes for Q&A now, which
Okay.
is good. Doing well.
That's very good. We can have
I want to point out to the audience that you can type questions in the chat. There's a Q&A box. When you type a question, the panelists will see it first, and then the audience will see an answer when a panelist replies in writing. Because of the large number of audience members, we aren't able to accommodate people to unmute and speak or share camera, but feel free to type questions. And I wonder if any of the panelists want to respond verbally, either to the questions or to the points that each other have made. I'd be very interested to hear Julieta's answer to the question that I think his name was Jörg asked around what is the maximum hosting capacity for a distribution feeder or for a substation. And I've given one answer to that in the written form, but Julieta might be able to add to it.
Thank you, Alan. I think I agree with the answer, and it's one of the key messages of the report series. Every local substation and feeder has its own limits. And so we have been encouraging my consulting firm now. Before I used to work for the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. And so we gained a lot of experience and understanding that every substation and distribution circuit really has its own limit. In Hawaii, we did some work. You would find feeders that would find the limits early, less than 10% of peak load. There were some feeders that could go over 100 with minimal technical requirements. And so by if we choose a limit that it's universal to all of the distribution system, we are really going to limit the potential of distributed PV. So I think that's sort of the main message. And every also a utility manages locally and has designed the distribution system in a different way. And so my colleague from South Africa was mentioning understanding the equipment that you have that is not bidirectional, that might need to be bidirectional after a certain percentage is important. But again, we really encourage sort of the gaining capacity in having the ability to understand each circuit, its circuit's limit versus coming up with a universal rule. I will just mention a universal rule that was used for a while was the 15% rule, which really came from the assumption that 30% of the peak load was going to be your minimum daytime load. That is one of the key limits to understanding how much hosting capacity, your minimum daytime load. And as you probably know, if you work in the utility space, each local circuit is going to have a very different minimum load depending on the load that it's serving. So trying to gain an understanding of that is very important. Thank you.
I'm just taking the liberty to share on the screen the summary. This is from the executive summary of report 2. So it's got 2 menus of options here. We won't go through these, but report 2 goes through each of these one by one. Options to balance the local load and options to enhance the hosting capacity, as well as the reasons why it's important. What are the limits you need to respect, which is on the left-hand side. So I refer readers to report 2 for details on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Alan. And I see there are some other questions open. There is one question about if there is any country where households are benefiting from rooftop solar leasing activity, and if so, what is the benefit for all the parties involved? I think there were some cases in US. Maybe Julieta can explain. You want to take this question about leasing of solar rooftop panels?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? Which one is it?
Yeah, it's an open question. Are there any countries where households are benefiting from rooftop solar leasing actively? And if so, what is the benefits for all the parties involved?
Yes, absolutely. It's not my particular area of expertise, but definitely what we have seen is that allowing leasing agreements has greatly benefited the adoption. And so you don't need the capital cost up front, obviously. And it has been extremely dynamic in if you compare countries or states, for example, here in the United States, that have not incurred leasing, the market has not really been able to be developed. So it's a very flexible and affordable option to be able to benefit from a reduced energy consumption without having to put up the upfront capital cost. But maybe somebody else can also comment.
Yeah, I don't know if Abhishek or somebody wants to. I see one of the participants would like to add to this, but I don't know if it's possible to allow for maybe they can indicate in the chat, and we can read it out. I don't know, Abhishek, would you like to comment on this leasing model? If you know of any country that is any relevant case study? I think there are some problems.
Can you repeat the question? I couldn't hear that, please.
Yeah, the question was about leasing of rooftop solar panels. If you know of any country or any case study in which this has been successful, the leasing model.
Leasing meaning solar panel
Renting.
leasing or rooftop leasing?
I think it's probably solar panel leasing for rooftops.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So when we say solar panel leasing, so this is nothing but on loans. So this is, if I understand correctly, the solar panel system integrator, what they do is they put up there and individuals take solar loans and then they pay back to the the lending agency. It could be solar panel manufacturer giving them the credit and the loan, or like in one case in India, for example, Tata Power Solar is a big company. They offer their solutions, that not only solar panel, but the complete solutions on lease to their participating consumer on a EMI, equated monthly installment basis. So that is possible in India. Yes, that is being done.
Thank you. I think there is an interesting question in general, but I think maybe this is a good question for Mfundi to answer about what are the major issues and challenges in the grid integration of PV systems, and I think particularly for distributed PV systems. Yeah.
Yes, Sylvia. The main challenge is in integrating solar PVs. First of all, from a technical perspective, it is the sizing of the right size of the sizing, because in most cases they over design, and then it becomes a big problem for the network, because if you over design, you'll have more capacity, then you'll have more upstream combined capacity when you have an integration of all these small dots. Then the second thing is having technicians that really understand, because it's an emerging technology. So you have to have people that really understand what they're talking about. We have had situations in the scanning of the industry where people say that after the installation of the solar PVs, their network starts tripping where it's grid tied. That is a big challenge. So the plug and play that is being mentioned, when it comes to grid tied, it's not like that. But when it comes to the microgrid, which means they are isolated by they are on their own, there you can take chances and plug and play. But when it comes to integration with the network, it's a bit of a challenge. And then the third thing is specifying the right intertrip switch, which is what we have here in the country. But to stop that, we have a standard, and we've set up work groups that work on that. Then the fourth aspect is possible fires, where now you have got overheating, because the old network where the solar PVs are being installed is old. So you have to check the whole network and check its integrity before you install these solar panels, solar PV distributed generators. And then the other challenge is the attitude of the people, because people think that distributed solar PV is inferior, and that notion is one of the biggest challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Mfundi. And I think also in addition to these challenges that are very specific for distributed PV, I mean, we still have the challenges overall of the flexibility of the grid, in case of I mean, to really ramp up when the solar PV goes down, if there is not enough storage or if there is not enough generation to balance, right? When the rates of distributed PV are starting to increase, no? But I guess, I think there are also some interesting comments from the speakers, from the participants in the chat. It seems that regarding leasing models, there is also a very interesting model in Burkina Faso. I think this would be good to learn.
Sylvia, just before that, can I just make one point? I'm going to refer again to this slide because there's actually a really fundamental point which we didn't emphasize in our presentation, but I would like to make that point now, which is that the technical issues that arise at higher levels of DPV deployment. So you might begin with low penetration, see some voltage issues as it gets more and more DPV in the community or in the city. You will see more technical issues arise. The key point that we try to advocate is to plan ahead, that it shouldn't be about looking at what is the solution to meet the current level of deployment, but how do you anticipate future growth, uncertainty around how much will be deployed, and what are the no regrets or low cost options that you can implement right now, like grid codes that anticipate the need for inverter-based technologies like PV and also wind uses inverters to accommodate those. So that's one of the important messages that I'd like to mention as well. Thanks.
No, indeed, all the problems can be easier to solve when you have proper planning, no? And I think in this case, it's also proper regulation ahead and proper standards also ahead, no? So I think it's a combination, and I think as Julieta pointed out, no, it's very important to have all the aspects at hand before scaling up or before a program is launched to scale up distributed PV. I think also, I mean, I saw some questions. Yeah, there are some comments about we often overlook the social dimension, what Mfundi was highlighting, right? That there are some important socially, the perception that distributed solar is inferior. I mean, I have myself seen that in some countries in Latin America, where people see this distributed PV is used to make them happy instead of extending the grid, but they are understanding now that the level of service can be very similar in off-grid solutions as well. But I think in terms of I mean, residential programs and dual use in India, I think there are a lot of challenges there. I think there are more questions, about integration issues, but I think most of the questions were answered already. I don't know if any of you wants to make any points about the questions that you have been answering. Alan or Thomas, you want to summarize?
I'm happy to take the question. Ujwal Bhattacharjee makes this really good point about different uses of roofs. So some people might prefer to use their roofs for other purposes, like solar water heating. The green roofs are being pursued by some buildings. That's a very different kind of infrastructure. But roofs are also used for basic things like hanging out washing or playing in certain countries and communities. In Bangladesh, they use roofs for advertising. So I think this is exactly the reason why we recommend that cities and communities take a coordinated planning approach to find the optimal set of solutions and to help consumers think through the different uses for their roofs, as well as the ways to share the benefits. If you imagine that roofs are a kind of resource, roof space is a resource just as land is a resource. And there's creative ways to combine those. So it's quite common to see canopies above car parks, above canals, water bodies, or even floating PV, whether that be on urban or rural bodies of water, are all ways that you can combine different uses for constrained lands.
Thank you, Alan. And I think there was also a question about the fit all arrangement. I don't know if Thomas wants to clarify this.
Yeah, thanks, Sylvia. So we answered the question in the chat. The feed-all arrangement is an arrangement that where indeed all the electricity that's generated by the distributed PV asset is fed directly into the grid rather than being consumed on site by the consumer. It's also known as a gross metering or net billing scheme. And is used for community social support, least cost generation, or bootstrap use cases. There are several benefits of these, which we've written out here. So as is shown in this graph, this is the first arrangement on the left, as opposed to an arrangement where some of the electricity might be fed to the grid, with the rest for self-supply under a feed-sum arrangement. And then under the feed-none arrangement, the DPV system is completely often paired with a battery or the kind of backup solution, and completely separate from the grid part, and entirely used on site. The benefits of the feed-all is that all the electricity that's generated will be used. It's all fed into the grid, so there's no kind of curtailment, if you will, of that energy. It often comes with financial incentives for the user to install the system, for the DPV owner to install the system, so this kind of encourages an adoption of DPV, makes it more financially attractive for a greater range of customers.
Thank you, Thomas. So I think we can maybe close this Q&A session, if you agree. I don't see more points. I think, I want to thank the panelists for their excellent presentations and for their time. I know it's not always easy to be available, and there are we are all experiencing several technical issues in this webinar. But I think everything was very clear, and thank you all for your presentations. Maybe I would like to, from my side, I would like to give you a bit of an overview of an important initiative that is related to this program, because distributed PV is becoming one of our main important business lines in ECA, and we have launched recently. I don't know if we can show the slide, Thomas, or Alan. Yeah, about we have approved what we call a multi-phase approach for scaling up renewables in the ECA region. This is one of the first MPA approaches approved by the bank at the regional level. There is one for access in Africa, and then we approved this for scaling up renewables in Europe and Central Asia. And as you can see, this is a massive program. What it means is that the banks really increasing their level of ambition for scaling up renewables. And we are trying to, the idea is to provide over $2 billion of dollars for programs that are aimed to scale up renewables. And the way we will do it is mostly because basically what we would do is reduce barriers, enhance policies, and also eliminate grid integration barriers, right? That are one of the key issues by enhancing also interconnections and enhancing the flexibility in power systems in ECA that are often not flexible enough to accommodate a high level of renewables. Also technical assistance programs, and also financial risk mitigation programs. So overall, combining all these instruments, we plan to provide this $2 billion over 10 years. Actually, this is already increasing because we just approved we are now in the third phase, so 3 countries, and there are already 2 new projects that were not accounted for in this $2 billion. The idea is to scale up to provide over 15 gigawatts of renewables. To support this directly or indirectly enable 15 gigawatts of renewables over these 10 years. This is kind of our conservative estimate, because we will need to be accountable for it, and to mobilize private sector funding. Around 6 billion should be mobilized and directly linked to the program. And this, I mean, this will have also, is expected to have also potential externalities and create jobs and of course reduce emissions accordingly to this level of ambition. I mean, as I said, distributed PV is an important part, and actually the first phase of this program was a program in which Alan has been involved. It's a distributed solar program in Turkey with a financial intermediary, two financial intermediaries. So it's a very interesting program and very innovative, and I think we could be replicated in other countries as well. As you say, it's a one. I mean, I think Alan maybe can explain a bit about this.
Sure. Because we have still a minute or two before we'll need to close, but maybe just to mention, because this is a very new program that has a range of innovations. I'm the team leader for this, along with my colleague Arno Broad, and a large team with two leading development banks in Turkey, the Turkey Industrial Development Bank and Turkey Industry and Investment Bank, that will provide loans for distributed PV across Turkey, and also will build the capacity of other financiers, such as commercial banks and even distribution companies, to become lenders themselves for projects. It also includes a grant funding to support distributed battery applications, which are a very new area in Turkey. This program was just approved a few months ago, so it's right at the beginning stage, and it will hopefully leverage over in total $1 billion to create 1 gigawatts of energy. Thanks.
Thank you. And now, yes, we have only 5 minutes, and at this point, I would like to pass the floor to Christophe de Gouvello for closing remarks for this interesting webinar. Christophe is a senior energy specialist working in ESMAP right now, but he has extensive experience in many developing countries. He's a great colleague. I have worked with him in Brazil. And he's now the coordinator of this innovative solar program in ESMAP. So, Christophe, over to you.
Thank you very much, Silvia. So I hope you can hear me correctly. Yes?
Yes,
okay.
I can.
So thank you very much, Alan and Thomas, for this great presentation. And thank you also to our panelists for sharing their valuable experience and feedback. With Julieta, we learned how important it is to use planning to optimize all the use cases, and planning certainly has been one of the key words of these discussions too. And with Yavuz, we discovered a sequence of consistent steps for comprehensive government programs to ensure successful deployment of DPV. So thank you so much, Yavuz, for sharing these very consistent steps. And with Abhishek, we learned about a very interesting and inclusive community-based business model, the community solar. So it's very interesting for ensuring a just transition. And with Mufundi, we heard about ESCOM experience on how to manage overloads and communicate on complicated issues with people to mitigate that risk. So thank you very much. And thank you, Silvia, also for navigating us into this very complicated and sophisticated discussion, very rich. So I think with all these presentations and interventions, we confirm, if it was still necessary, that the huge potential for DPV can bring multiple opportunities, not only for energy transition, but for just transition, because it can be made affordable and improve the quality of services for the low-income consumers. I think it is really something specific from this technology. But we also have seen that it comes with a lot of challenges, in particular for the utilities. And these utilities really need to be prepared to benefit from this coming wave, if not to tell a tsunami coming from the DPV, rather than being overwhelmed by it. So it's super important to be prepared. And we believe that this report series can help navigate these challenges by providing these multiple use cases and business models and policy guidances that can adapt to the diversity of contexts that characterize all developing or client countries. So ESMAP will continue to support countries, especially through our regional units, to deploy DPV in an efficient and just manner, like, for instance, the Turkey program that was just presented, that ESMAP is supporting with 2 freemium grants, and to improve both the quality of services and also to help decarbonization. So I would like to mention that actually ESMAP is also doing other things to support the DPV deployment. For instance, we have already developed a solar rooftop mapping tool, which uses geospatial imagery to map out the potential for solar rooftops in cities and disaggregating that potential according to the type of buildings, the residential, commercial, industrial. And I think the link is being shared by my colleague Barbara in the chat now. So you can access the website of that tool. And also we will soon be preparing, we are actually preparing an online e-learning based on this report series. So please stay tuned. And with that, I would like to thank you all again. And I think we can close this webinar with 1 or 2 minutes in advance. So thank you all again for these wonderful discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Christophe. Thank you all for your participation and interesting comments. All the
Bye-bye.
best. Bye.
Thank you.